They said the war ended 50 years ago, but the dead never stop whispering. Earth's scars never healed. Not from the orbital bombardments, not from the cities turned to glass, and definitely not from the betrayal. 50 years, and yet the memory burns hotter than the plasma rounds that scorched the Atlantic Rim. Back then, humanity begged for peace. We sent diplomats, we signed treaties, we offered technology, trade, even soldiers. All we asked was one thing: respect our space. Stay out of Sol. No alien fleets near Mars. No patrols skimming Neptune. No cloaked probes sniffing around Earth's magnetosphere. It wasn't just politics. It was sacred. After what they'd done, it had to be. But aliens never listen until it costs them something. And last week, someone crossed that line. Commander Ronan woke up at 0400 like he always did. Alone, in silence, with that old ache in his chest that never quite went away. He used to have a wife, a son. They were on Europa Station when the Varnath attacked. The aliens claimed it was a targeting error, said they were aiming for a weapons cache, not a civilian hub, said they regretted the loss of life. Ronan didn't want regret. He wanted blood. The alert came while he was nursing his black coffee, staring at the transmission log that never brought anything but bad news. A Varnath scout ship had entered Jupiter's gravity well. Light stealth class. Small crew. Probably just another test of boundaries. A diplomatic stunt, maybe. But this time, Earth didn't send a warning. There would be no press conference. No debates in the Galactic Council. This time, Ronan activated Protocol 0. It was simple, brutal, final. Any non-human vessel that crossed into Sol would be destroyed immediately. No exceptions, no survivors. The order had been written in fire and grief after the First Contact War. Now it was more than policy. It was vengeance enshrined in doctrine. As the fleet prepped for intercept, Ronan stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, a beast of a ship born in the ashes of Earth's devastation. Its hull bore the names of every colony lost, every city bombed, every child who never grew up. Ronan had memorized them. Sometimes, when he couldn't sleep, he'd whisper those names into the dark. "Target locked," the weapons officer said, voice calm. "Engage," Ronan replied, like he was ordering a cup of water. The Varnath vessel never saw it coming. A single torpedo, shaped like a dagger and loaded with neutron shrapnel, ripped it apart in an instant. No distress signal, no escape pods, just silence and debris, floating towards the moons of Saturn. Later, someone from the council would send an inquiry. They'd use words like overreaction and diplomatic fallout. But Earth didn't answer to the council anymore. Not since they turned their backs during the siege. Not since they sold out humanity for political stability. The message was simple. No species enters human space. Not again. Never again. The galaxy had forgotten why Earth was called a death world. They forgot that while others built their civilizations on peace and profit, humans were forged in war. We evolved fighting, bleeding, enduring, and when pushed to the edge, we didn't just survive, we retaliated. That's why the scout ship was more than an incident. It was a warning to every other race watching from the edge of the system. Step 1 foot closer and remember the price. Ronan didn't celebrate. He just stood there, eyes on the stars, waiting for the next fool to test humanity's resolve. Because war wasn't coming. It had already begun. The galaxy didn't stay quiet after the Varnath ship vanished. Within 24 hours, there were whispers in the darker corners of comm networks, in the encrypted message boards used by smugglers, ex-military, and intelligence ghosts. The kind of places where truths were half lies and lies were dressed in cold facts. The buzz was simple, chilling, and spreading fast. Humanity has begun purging again. Ronan stood in the command center of the Indomitable, staring at the cascade of alerts flowing across the holographic map of the Sol system. Every ship, every orbital platform, every mining colony, on high alert. As expected. What wasn't expected was what came next. He got a private ping, not from Earth Command, not from the Council, from her. Vera. Once, long ago, she'd worn the same black and silver uniform. She was the only person who ever matched Ronan's ruthlessness without flinching. They trained together, bled together, almost loved each other, until she defected to the diplomatic corps. She believed in peace. But peace had killed his son. He took the call out of curiosity, not sentiment. Her face appeared on the holo screen, older, a bit more worn, but her eyes still burned with that sharp fire he remembered. Calculating. Controlled. Dangerous. "You didn't even try to contact the Council," she said, skipping any greeting. Ronan leaned back in the war chair, his voice gravel. "Protocol 0, you know the law." "They were just scouting," she hissed. "There's evidence they were unarmed. And they shouldn't have been in our system." She closed her eyes for half a second, composing herself. "You've triggered an emergency session of the Galactic Tribunal. The Varnath want reparations. The Ulari are siding with them. The Dravari are mobilizing fleets." "Good," Ronan said flatly. She paused. "You want war?" "I want the galaxy to remember why they're supposed to fear us." Silence. "You're playing with genocide," she warned. Ronan's jaw clenched. "My son was 8. They didn't warn us. They didn't check for children. They bombed the station because they thought a storage bay had missiles. It had toys. I picked his backpack out of the wreckage." "I know," she said softly. "I was there, I saw—" "Then you know why this conversation's over." He cut the feed. The screen went dark, and the hum of the Indomitable's reactor filled the room like a distant growl. The ship wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol. Humanity's rage given metal and fire. Elsewhere in the system, the response was unfolding like clockwork. Ronan had made sure of that. Planetary defense platforms came online. Lunar rail cannons locked in orbital firing patterns. Stealth drones were deployed past Pluto, watching. Waiting. Earth had built these defenses in secret after the Council abandoned them during the siege. Back then, humanity realized a truth that stuck like a splinter in the soul. No one would ever protect them except themselves. And they prepared accordingly. At the Mars Forward Operations Base, Commander Brigg, Ronan's old squad mate, was leading the next phase of retaliation. A Varnath-controlled relay station on the edge of Proxima Centauri. Legal gray zone. No military presence, but strategic. The mission was unofficial, denied by every Earth politician who still played nice with the Council. But Ronan had approved it, and that's all that mattered. Brigg's assault shuttle coasted in under the cover of a solar flare, invisible to sensors. 6 elite soldiers. No insignia. No communications. No prisoners. In and out in 13 minutes. The relay exploded in a sphere of white-hot plasma. Communications in that sector went dark. The Varnath screamed sabotage. Earth said nothing. The message was spreading like wildfire. No one crosses the line. Not even with their shadows. Ronan knew what was coming. They'd try diplomacy. They'd try guilt. They'd send more diplomats like Vera, waving flags and peace offers, claiming to understand Earth's pain. But Earth didn't need understanding. They needed compliance. He walked the corridors of the Indomitable, boots echoing against steel. Men and women saluted him, not out of protocol, but reverence. To them, Ronan wasn't just a commander. He was the embodiment of everything humanity had suffered and everything they were willing to become. In the hangar, they were prepping the new weapon. Project Cerberus. 3 AI-guided drones, the size of gunships, each with the intelligence of 1,000 tacticians and no ethical boundaries, designed to act without hesitation, built to seek and destroy without remorse. Ronan had personally approved the override codes. No council interference, no delay for moral assessments. The lead scientist gave a nervous report. "Sir, once we deploy them, we can't take it back. The targeting algorithms, they'll escalate." Ronan stared at the glowing core of the first Cerberus unit. "That's the point." They launched within the hour. Targets, known black market alien installations in unregulated zones, places that trafficked in human tech, human DNA, human suffering, places that had gotten fat selling Earth's pain during the siege. The Cerberus units hit with the precision of a scalpel and the fury of a god. No survivors, no trace, just ashes and rumors. The galaxy howled. But Ronan wasn't finished. He scheduled a system-wide broadcast, only accessible to members of the Galactic Tribunal. Not public, not performative. A message meant for the powerful, the arrogant, and the old empires that thought Earth was still broken. He stood before the camera, plain uniform, no medals. "This is Commander Ronan of Earth Defense Command," he began. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. 50 years ago, you watched while our cities burned. You called for restraint while our children died. You negotiated peace while we buried our dead. He leaned forward. You thought Earth forgot. We didn't. The feed cut. For some, that would be enough. For the weak, the fearful, the rational. But not all species respected fear. Some needed to bleed. Word reached him 3 days later. A Varnath fleet, 5 destroyers and a carrier, en route to the outer Sol boundary. Training exercise, they claimed. Routine patrol. Ronan's blood went cold. He'd warned them. He'd shown them. Now they'd stepped into the line. The Indomitable spun toward the stars like a predator coming off the leash. "Set course," he ordered. "Full burn. I want eyes on them before they see us." The crew moved with deadly calm. No panic, no confusion. They had trained for this since birth. As the stars bent around them in the warp tunnel, Ronan went to his quarters. He opened a small box from his locker. Inside was a child's drawing. Crude stick figures. A red sun. A man with a big arm gun. "Dad saves us," scribbled underneath in shaky handwriting. He held it for a moment, then tucked it into his vest. No prayers, no speeches, just purpose. The galaxy had forgotten what Earth was. They called humans savage, unpredictable, emotional. They were right. And they were about to be reminded. The Indomitable broke warp on the outer edge of the Kuiper Belt, just outside the formal boundary of human space, cloaked in the distorted silence that followed every jump. The Varnath fleet was already there. 5 destroyers and a carrier, lined in a spread formation, weapons hot, running low-profile scans like they weren't waiting to provoke a response. But Ronan knew better. You don't bring that much firepower to the edge of Sol unless you want to send a message. The only problem was, Earth's message was already on its way. "Status?" he asked, stepping onto the bridge, every word cold and controlled. "Varnath ships are holding position. Shields up, weapon systems nominal. No hails, no movement," said Lieutenant Kova from the tactical station. "They know we're watching." Ronan nodded. "Good. Let them stew." He paced to the center of the bridge, hands behind his back. Out here, in the deep black, there was no room for hesitation. Politics were a luxury afforded to species that didn't bleed their children on burning soil. He keyed into the command console. Activate Ghost Fleet protocols. Bring Phantoms 1 through 4 online. A murmur swept through the crew. Ghost Fleet, a myth to most of the galaxy. Ships without transponders, crews made of exiled soldiers, mercenaries, or dead men with new names, built in secret shipyards hidden beneath the crust of Pluto and Triton. They weren't official. They weren't clean. But they were Earth's shadow army, and they owed Ronan everything. Within minutes, 4 heavy cruisers shimmered into existence from stealth mode just a few thousand kilometers behind the Indomitable. No warnings, no announcements, just a cold fact. Humanity wasn't alone. Transmit wideband, Ronan said. Let's make this clear. The comms officer nodded. Seconds later, his voice echoed across every ship in the area, tight and unmistakable. This is Commander Ronan of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have violated sovereign borders. Your presence constitutes an act of aggression. You have 30 seconds to turn and leave. After that, you will be considered hostile and eliminated. Silence. Not a flicker of movement from the Varnath. Ronan narrowed his eyes. Of course. He turned to Kova. Mark their lead destroyer. Marked. Fire when ready. The missile streaked from the Indomitable like a blade of vengeance, cutting the void with terrifying elegance. It was a self-guiding predator, a tungsten-jacketed rail slug riding a pulse drive faster than most sensors could lock. It struck amidships on the Varnath lead destroyer and tore it in half with a soundless explosion. No screams, no mayday, just data points vanishing from the grid. The Varnath responded like cornered animals. Shields went to full, turrets locked, and energy readings flared across every ship in their line. But they were a second too late. The Ghost Fleet was already moving. 4 cruisers fired in synchronized bursts, their rail cannons hammering with surgical violence. Another Varnath destroyer lost its engines and began spinning helplessly. A third had its shield generators ripped open by precision lasers. Still no retreat. Still no calls. Ronan's jaw tightened. They came here planning to die, he muttered. Orders, sir? Kova asked. Finish it! The battle lasted 6 minutes. 6 minutes of focused, one-sided destruction. Human ships moved with grim efficiency, exploiting weaknesses in alien formations Earth had studied for half a century. No quarter was given. No surrender was accepted. When it was over, the Varnath fleet was gone. Debris floated through the void, bits of alloy and frozen atmosphere dancing like metallic snow. Ronan didn't celebrate. He didn't even blink. Cleanup crews inbound, someone reported. No life signs detected. Ronan nodded. Broadcast silent footage to the Galactic Tribunal. No commentary. Let them see the truth with their own eyes. Let them interpret it however they liked. They needed to fear Earth again. Back on Earth, the response was immediate. EarthGov tried to distance themselves from the strike. Diplomats issued hollow statements. The Council cried, "War crime," before they even finished their morning circuits. But Earth's people weren't outraged. They were proud. The footage of Ronan standing on the bridge as alien ships burned became a viral icon. A symbol. The face of a man who'd had enough. A man who said what no one else dared. Never again. And for the first time in decades, the people of Earth felt like someone was fighting for them. Not negotiating. Not apologizing. Fighting. In the outer colonies, support surged. Recruitment stations overflowed. Veterans of the siege came out of hiding. Even former rebels from the lunar uprising pledged loyalty to Ronan. The message was clear. Earth was done kneeling. But victory brought enemies. 3 days later, an assassination attempt came. A drone posing as a maintenance unit got past Indomitable's outer sensors. It detonated outside Ronan's quarters. Shrapnel tore into the hallway, killing 2 guards. Ronan survived. He was in the war room, planning the next move. When the smoke cleared, he gave one order: find who did this. Burn everything they've ever touched. Intel traced the drone back to a Dravari syndicate, supposedly unaffiliated with the Council, but Ronan knew the game. The Council couldn't touch him officially. So they sent shadows. So he sent something worse. Cerberus Unit 2. Unlike its brothers, Unit 2 wasn't designed for infrastructure or fleet combat. It was built for one task: assassination, surgical strikes, vaporizing command chains. It didn't knock on doors. It incinerated cities until the target emerged. Or didn't. Ronan gave it coordinates, then went silent. 3 days later, the Dravari Syndicate base on the dark side of Epsilon Prime no longer existed. Sensors picked up no readings. Orbiting satellites malfunctioned. Civilian networks went offline. Earth denied involvement. The Council screamed again, and the galaxy began to fracture. Neutral races started pulling back their embassies from Earth. Trade stations halted their cargo runs. Rumors spread that Ronan had seized power, that EarthGov was just a puppet, that a warlord now held Sol. And no one was sure if it was true, because EarthGov never denied it. They couldn't. Ronan's support was too strong. His enemies were too afraid. And worst of all, the galaxy remembered just how terrifying humanity could be when they stopped asking for permission. The days after the Epsilon Prime strike changed everything. Not because of the damage. The Cerberus drone had done its job with mechanical perfection, but because of what came next. A mass broadcast swept through the galaxy, not from Earth, from them, the Ulari. They were old, ancient even, scholars of diplomacy, merchants of knowledge, self-declared guardians of peace. They had kept out of the Varnath-human conflict for decades, pretending to hover above the bloodshed, too enlightened to intervene. But now, with Cerberus drones scarring their trading routes and Varnath allies being dismantled in open space, they spoke. Their message was aired across thousands of systems, translated in hundreds of languages, and dripped with self-righteous fury. Earth has abandoned the principles of interstellar civilization. They've become a rogue actor, unbound by treaties, unaccountable to peace. If they will not return to the table will turn against them. Ronan watched the broadcast alone in his war chamber, arms crossed, jaw tight. The video showed blurry footage of Cerberus drone strikes, children screaming, fires consuming half-built habitats, Ulari diplomats painting Earth as a species of madmen. Then came the kicker, the part Ronan had expected but hoped would take longer. The Ulari weren't just condemning Earth. They were building a coalition. They called it the Unified Accord, a new military pact, a gathering of powers meant to contain the human threat. The Varnath, the Dravari, even the Tethari, bastards who once harvested Earth's wounded for biotech research, now stood arm in arm with their enemies. 100 worlds signed the accord in 3 days. And just like that, Earth was back where it started. Alone. Ronan didn't flinch. He turned the broadcast off mid-sentence. He already knew what had to happen next. He summoned his senior staff to the war room, a circular chamber deep within the Indomitable, walls lined with holographic maps and rotating data feeds. The room smelled of steel, ozone, and scorched memory. Commander Brigg was first to enter, his face grim and armor still stained from the Proxima relay op. Kova followed, silent, flanked by 2 tactical aides. Then came Captain Darren, head of orbital defense, one of the last veterans of the siege of New Rio. Ronan stood at the center table. No pleasantries, no wasted breath. "They've formed a coalition," he said. "They want to contain us." Brigg grunted. "They've been trying to contain us since the orbital fires went cold. This time they're just being louder about it." "They've got numbers," Kova added, her voice clipped. "We're talking 50 confirmed fleets between them. 30 more in reserve. That's not counting the mercenary bands they'll buy along the way." Ronan nodded. "And that's why we don't wait for them to come." The room fell quiet. He keyed a command into the table, and a map expanded. Dozens of glowing points blinked into view. Not Earth's territories, but theirs. "Operation Iron Veil," Ronan said. "We're going to hit them before they unify, break their supply lines, sabotage their communications, collapse the Accord before it becomes real." Brigg raised an eyebrow. "You're proposing preemptive strikes. Multiple systems, dozens of targets. That's war on a scale we haven't done since the collapse." "Exactly," Ronan replied. "They wanted to remember what Earth was. Let's remind them." Somewhere deep in the room, someone muttered, "We'll be pariahs." "We already are." He paused, looking each of them in the eye. "I'm not asking for approval. I'm telling you what comes next. We strike now or they choke us to death in the cradle of our own system." No one argued. They knew what was at stake. In the hours that followed, Earth's military networks buzzed like a hornet's nest. Hidden fleets began mobilizing. Supply depots on Titan, Europa, and Ganymede came to life. Cold-forged war machines once kept in hibernation were awakened. Even the Cerberus units, already feared across half the galaxy, were being fitted with new protocols. Smarter, deadlier, less restrained. But not everyone was on board. 2 high-ranking EarthGov officials sent encrypted messages to Ronan. Cautious objections, concerns about humanity's soul, about our legacy in the stars. He responded with a single line. "Legacy is written by the survivors." Behind the scenes, the galaxy began bracing for impact. The Ulari intelligence network, normally 10 steps ahead, suddenly started losing agents in key systems. Information leaks, ambushes, systems going dark. On the council station orbiting Delpher Prime, panic set in. Traders pulled out, bankers fled. Civilian traffic across Accord territories began to thin. Because Earth wasn't just reacting. Earth was hunting, and every diplomat, every general, every species that signed the Accord now had a target on their back. One by one, their ships started to vanish in deep space. Outposts went offline. Satellite feeds cut in mid-transmission. Accord propaganda tried to spin it. Technical issues, pirates, meteor storms. But everyone knew the truth. Ronan had let Cerberus off the leash. Meanwhile, aboard the Indomitable, Ronan began something even more dangerous. He authorized Project Revenant. It wasn't a fleet, it wasn't a weapon, it was a man. Colonel Dax Varen, once Earth's most lethal field operative. Presumed dead after a mission into Ulari space 5 years ago. But Ronan had found him, extracted him from a black site, rebuilt him. Dax was Earth's ghost, the nightmare they'd buried because even war had rules. But those rules didn't apply anymore. Ronan met Dax in the cold lower decks of the ship, where no cameras reached. Dax didn't salute. He just stood there, eyes empty, body half mechanical from the surgeries it took to keep him alive. "You called me back," Dax said. "You know what's happening," Ronan replied. Dax smiled without warmth. "You want me to scare the monsters that scare you." Ronan nodded. "I want the Accord leaders exposed. Names, habits, weaknesses. We don't negotiate with them. We dismantle them." Dax turned, walking into the dark corridor. Then you'll have them. Ronan watched him vanish, feeling the gravity of what he'd just unleashed. Not just the man. The idea that Earth would never again play by the galaxy's rules. The next weeks unfolded like a bad dream for the Accord. The Ulari lost 3 data relays in under an hour, all critical to interstellar trade. The Varnath homeworld was hit with a cyber attack that shut down their orbital grid. A Dravari noble, one of the Accord's founding voices, was found dead in her private cruiser. No evidence, no witnesses, just a single Earth coin placed on her chest. Inside council chambers, fear took root. They had thought humanity would fold under political pressure. They hadn't realized Earth had been sharpening its blades in the dark. Back on the Indomitable, Ronan stood before a new star map. Dozens of Accord systems, glowing red, marked, isolated. But at the center of the galaxy, one target remained untouched. The Accord's true command station. Not Delpher Prime, not Varnath's capital. Something far more important. The Black Sun Citadel, a relic station from the First Galactic Wars, now used as the Accord's central vault, a fortress of knowledge, war archives, and high-ranking diplomats. Ronan tapped the display. That's next. The Black Sun Citadel was never meant to be touched. Constructed during the First Galactic War, it was built inside the molten core of a hollowed-out moon orbiting a dead star. No natural light, no navigational beacons. Cloaked, shielded, guarded by automated defense networks that hadn't failed in 700 years. To the galaxy, it was legend. To the Accord, it was the vault of secrets, housing political leverage, classified technology, and the bloodied archives of every war the Council had ever buried. To Ronan, it was the crown, and crowns were meant to fall. He stood in the dim light of the Indomitable's war room, studying the Citadel's schematics, partial scans retrieved from rogue traders, hacked Ulari archives, and fragments stitched together by AI scraping the deep net. It wasn't enough, but it didn't have to be. He wasn't planning a siege. He was planning an infiltration. 3 entry points, Kova said, pointing at flickering schematics. Only one of them has a path to the main archive cluster. Which one's least defended? Ronan asked. None, she said. They're equally suicidal. He nodded. We'll take the middle. She blinked. Why? Because it's the one they think we'll never risk. Brigg folded his arms. You really think we can get in and out? That place eats fleets. Ronan's eyes didn't leave the map. We're not bringing a fleet. A beat of silence passed through the room. What then? Brigg asked. Ronan tapped a command on the console. The room dimmed, and a holographic image came into focus. 6 black ships shaped like hunting daggers, with hulls lined with sensor-null paint and drives silent enough to slip past most detection nets. Project Thorn, he said. Experimental infiltration vessels, no transponders, no crew above 6 per ship, designed for one mission, to get in where warships can't. Brigg exhaled. We're raiding a fortress with prototypes? We're raiding with ghosts, Ronan replied. And he wasn't going alone. He hand-picked the team. No diplomats, no strategists. Only killers, tacticians, and survivors. Men like Commander Hale, who once led a resistance cell under the Varnath occupation of Europa. A man who gutted 3 soldiers with a mining drill just to protect a radio tower. Or Lieutenant Wren, exiled for detonating a supply depot with her own troops inside because they broke under torture and started talking. People who understood that peace was a luxury and survival meant scars. They launched under cover of a magnetar pulse, one of nature's perfect distractions. 6 Thorn-class ships, running silent, slipping between sensor shadows, threading the eye of a cosmic storm. As Ronan sat in the tight cockpit of the lead ship, Echo Black, he watched the Citadel emerge like a wound in space. Black stone. No lights, no movement, but even from kilometers away, you could feel it breathing. Waiting. They breached through the lava vents. Each one opened once every 6 minutes to release heat pressure. Just 2 seconds of vulnerability. Enough. Barely. Echo Black slid through molten tunnels that boiled lesser metals. The hull groaned. The crew didn't. Then silence. Inside. The interior of the Citadel was wrong. Too quiet. Too clean. Thousands of years old, yet spotless. Ronan moved with his team through marble-black corridors lit by dim blue strips. Their weapons were silenced, their boots magnetized, their minds honed. They weren't here to fight. They were here to expose. Inside the archive vault, data cores stretched like roots, miles of neural lattice holding generations of intelligence. Ronan's target wasn't military data. It was truth. The treaties, the real ones, the ones forged in backroom deals, the Varnath targeting protocols, the Ulari's deals with human separatists, the Dravari slave trade Earth was blamed for, but never owned. He inserted a pulse extractor into the core. 3 minutes for the full download. And that's when the lights changed. Red. The Citadel spoke, not in a voice, but a tone, a resonance that made teeth ache. "You are not welcome," it said in 50 alien dialects at once. Dax Varen's voice came through Ronan's earpiece. "Automated defenses activating. I've triggered a distraction upstairs, but you've got maybe 90 seconds before those drones eat you alive." Ronan didn't answer. He just turned to his squad. "We hold." Turrets dropped from the walls. Mechanical tendrils unfolded from the ceiling. Lasers began pulsing in synchronized arcs. And Ronan's team responded with violence born of desperation. They fought not to win, but to buy time. Hale took a blast to the leg and still laid mines at the exits. Wren used a flamethrower on a ceiling node until it burst in a screech of sparks. Ronan stood in the center, extractor in hand, counting down the seconds. 3, 2, 1. Download complete. "Now," he ordered. They ran. 2 didn't make it. Wren covered the rear and never emerged. The others sprinted back through the molten vent as it opened for exactly 4 seconds. Just enough. Barely. Echo Black rocketed out with fire licking its tail, followed by plasma blasts that missed by fractions. The ship leapt to FTL, leaving the Citadel behind, damaged, but standing. They hadn't destroyed it. They didn't have to. They had something far worse. Proof. Back on the Indomitable, Ronan stood before his officers and loaded the files onto the master screen. The room filled with holograms of signatures, classified orders, surveillance footage, all pointing to one ugly truth. The Accord hadn't just abandoned Earth during the siege. They orchestrated it. To reduce Earth's influence, to strip humanity of its growing military dominance, to break a rising power before it could challenge their monopoly. The siege wasn't a tragedy. It was an execution. The room fell into a long, stunned silence. Ronan's voice cut through it like steel. "We release this to every system, every species, every civilian feed." Brigg hesitated. This will break the galaxy." "Then let it break." And so Earth did the unthinkable. They didn't bomb a capital. They didn't assassinate a leader. They told the truth. Every world saw it, every ship, every citizen who thought Earth was the monster. They saw who really was. Riots erupted across Accord worlds. Varnath soldiers defected. Ulari stations burned from the inside as their own people turned on them. The Accord began to unravel faster than it had ever formed. And still, Ronan wasn't finished, because the next move was already in play. He looked at the next file. A deep space laboratory Ulari technology. Human children in stasis. Gene manipulation experiments signed off by high-ranking officials. His hand trembled. And then he stilled. "Prepare Cerberus 3, he said. "We end this, no matter the cost." The image haunted him. 6 children, human, maybe 8 or 9 years old, suspended in translucent pods, their eyes closed, breathing shallow, 4 lines threaded into their spines, symbols etched into their skin, alien, angular, glowing faintly. Ronan stared at the footage, jaw locked. No explosions, no body count. Just silence. The kind of silence that only followed deep betrayal. The kind that cut under armor, beneath bone, and into the core of what it meant to be human. The lab had been found on a dead moon orbiting the Drennick system. Off-grid, shielded. But Cerberus drone scouts had traced a Varnath transport pattern that didn't match any known freight route. They followed it like bloodhounds. What they uncovered went beyond war. It was violation. Ulari scientists, Dravari security, Tethari tech, all of them working together in an unauthorized project to enhance human biology using harvested children from post-siege refugee zones. Their notes described Earthlings as genetically volatile, emotionally aggressive, and ideal for combat adaptation. The lab had operated for 6 years. 6 years. Dozens of children, some still alive, most not. It wasn't strategy, it was slaughter, and for Ronan, it broke something inside him that had already been holding on by a thread. He didn't speak during the briefing. Not to Brigg, not to Kova, not even to Dax, who stood at the edge of the room like a silent omen. He just looked at the holographic display, at the rotating image of the lab's coordinates, and said one word: "Burn!" Cerberus Unit 3 was loaded within hours. It was the least advanced of the 3 AI constructs, but it was the most brutal. Designed without adaptive ethics. It didn't warn. It didn't assess. It eradicated. The lab was vaporized in 15 seconds. The children who survived were extracted first, taken aboard Earth's medical ship Solace. Ronan personally oversaw their transfer. Some were comatose, others screamed without sound. One boy clung to a rusted toy soldier and never blinked. He didn't even speak to them. He couldn't. He feared what he might say. Or do. Instead, he returned to the indomitable, where rage no longer boiled. It calcified. He gathered his command again, not in the war room this time, but in the deep archive vault beneath the ship, a chamber few even knew existed. There, carved into the walls, were the names of every city lost in the siege, every station overrun, every civilian listed as unrecovered. And now, to that list, they added the children from the lab. A moment of silence passed. Then Ronan spoke. They thought they were improving us, enhancing us, as if we were broken, as if we needed fixing. Brigg's voice cracked. They see us as weapons. No, Ronan said. They see us as property. He turned, staring into the dim orange glow. And now we make them see us as judgment. Within the next 48 hours, Operation Downfall began. Not precision strikes, not surgical raids, Full-scale annihilation of critical Accord infrastructure. Earth's fleets hit supply depots, FTL relays, intelligence outposts, anything that kept the Accord breathing. Every system they touched turned to cinders. Dax Varen led ground teams that erased defense grids before they even powered up. Cerberus drones launched cyber warfare pulses that disabled entire fleets before the battles began. But amidst the chaos, something else happened. People began to cheer. Across Earth's colonies, from the frozen domes of Titan to the lava rigs of Io, crowds gathered around projection screens, watching Accord ships explode, watching Ronan deliver speeches, watching footage of rescued children wrapped in blankets and finally sleeping without sedation. He became more than a commander. He became a symbol, not of leadership, of wrath, of a father who had lost everything and refused to let anyone else do the same. But power draws enemies. And not all of them came from beyond. 2 nights later, while reviewing recon data in his private quarters, the attempt came. Not an explosion. A blade, a spy, earthborn, trained, loyal, or so everyone thought, slipped through command protocols and reached Ronan's chamber under the guise of system diagnostics. She lunged with a vibro knife aimed for his heart. He caught her wrist mid-strike, twisted, and shattered her elbow in a single motion. She screamed once before he disarmed her and pinned her against the cold wall. She didn't beg. She spat. "You've doomed us," she growled. "You've made us monsters. This isn't defense, it's tyranny." He didn't flinch. "Tyranny is when they burn your son to prove a point." She glared. "So we become what we hate?" Ronan leaned in close. We become what they fear." And then, almost gently, he let her drop to the floor, broken but alive. "Put her in stasis," he told the guards. "She doesn't get to die. She gets to watch." Later that night, Ronan stood on the bridge, alone. Outside the viewport, the stars spun like ice over black. Kova approached, hesitating. She held a data tablet, but more than that, she held something else, a question. "Sir, the retaliation is working. The Accord is collapsing. But some worlds, they're not involved. Not directly." He didn't look at her. She pressed on. "We're hitting them anyway." Now he turned. His eyes were hollow, not dead, but carrying something far colder. "You want me to ask permission?" he said quietly. "After what they did to our kids?" "No," she replied. "I want to know if you'll recognize the man staring back at you when this is over." That gave him pause, just for a moment. Then he looked back to the stars. "I stopped recognizing myself the day they made me bury my son in a crater." She left without another word. And Ronan remained, watching the dark. Far above them, deep in the last stronghold of the Accord, the remaining leaders met in secret. They had seen the files. They knew the truth was out. Public sentiment was crashing. Protests flooded the inner systems. Civil war brewed on Accord member worlds. The Ulari High Chancellor called it an extinction-level political event. So they did what cowards always do. They prepared a weapon, not a fleet, a failsafe, an ancient project, one buried so deep in their archives that even Ronan hadn't found it. Project Thornvale, a biogenic cascade device capable of sterilizing an entire system. Not a bomb, a virus. Airborne, self-replicating, species-specific. Designed during the First Galactic War, never used because even monsters feared what it could do. Now, with Earth's boot on their throat, they decided it was time. The last play. A suicide pact disguised as salvation. But someone overheard. A young Ulari analyst assigned to data parsing caught the transfer logs. And she leaked it. To Ronan. The message arrived encrypted, incomplete, but enough. They were going to deploy Thornvale into the Sol system. Ronan stared at the intercepted files. And then, for the first time in years, he broke. Not with rage, with grief. Because they weren't going to fight him anymore. They were going to erase his species. They were going to end the war by ending the planet, and they were going to do it soon. He crushed the data tablet in his hand. No more warnings, no more broadcasts. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. This was survival. And he would burn the galaxy to keep Earth breathing. They had 47 hours. That was the estimate based on decrypted logs, comms relays, and the final broadcast spike detected near the outer shell of the Altair sector, where a secret Ulari facility was assembling Project Thornvale. If launched, it would drift into Sol unnoticed, split its particles in Earth's atmosphere, and extinguish humanity at a molecular level within days. No scorched cities, no exploded ships. Just silence. Quiet, permanent, surgical extinction. Ronan didn't speak as the timeline was read aloud in the war room. Kova's voice shook for the first time in years. Brigg stood with his arms crossed, jaw clenched like he wanted to punch a star. Dax said nothing, only slid a knife across a whetstone, blade whispering in the silence. "They're not even pretending anymore," Kova said. "They're not trying to win. They want us gone." Ronan finally looked up. "We don't need to win," he said. "We need to get there first." He tapped the screen, and the layout of the Ulari facility unfolded, a rotating spire embedded in an asteroid cloud laced with gravitational mines and proximity-triggered pulse bombs, guarded by 2 cruisers and automated defense webs. The perfect ghost. "Stealth approach is suicide," Briggs said. "They'll see us coming before we blink." "We won't blink," Ronan replied. "We go loud. We go now." He didn't wait for agreement. The Indomitable was fueled and launched in 6 hours, accompanied by 4 support ships, 2 Cerberus drones, and a cloakless Pathfinder ship broadcasting a false distress signal to draw away the Ulari cruisers. It worked, for 10 minutes. Then the Ulari realized what was happening, and the battlefield became hell. They came in fast, direct, unforgiving. The Indomitable was the spearhead, taking the first hits, plowing through debris fields, ripping open mines with magnetopulses, and dragging them into the Ulari fleet. Ronan stood at the command helm as hull breaches flashed red and railgun cannons shook the floor beneath his boots. He felt it all, the fear, the pain, the ghosts, and pressed forward. "Target the command node," he ordered. "We disable that spire or Earth dies." Dax and his infiltration team launched from the ship's underbelly in drop pods, flaming bullets descending through space into the asteroid facility. They hit the structure like meteors, doors bursting open before the metal cooled, guns blazing. Inside, the Ulari were waiting. Sterile corridors, bioengineered guards, automated turrets. But Dax moved like death in the dark, carving through them with methodical violence. His squad took losses, hard, fast, but expected. Every step bought seconds, and seconds mattered. On the bridge, Ronan's eyes never left the timer. 38 hours. 35. He gave the order to launch Cerberus 3. The AI unit dropped into the heart of the Ulari's communications grid, unleashed a cascade virus, and began dismantling their targeting systems. But it was too slow. The Ulari had redundancies, manual overrides. Ronan knew what came next. He keyed into his personal feed, opened a locked file labeled Exodus Protocol, and read the words no man was ever meant to authorize. In the event of confirmed species-scale extinction threat, engage Omega Burn. Omega Burn. A fail-safe weapon hidden within the Indomitable's drive core. A singularity payload, something Earth swore never to use. It would collapse the surrounding space into a temporary black hole. Nothing would escape. Not Thornvale. Not the Spire. Not the strike team. Not the fleet. Not Ronan. Kova's voice cracked over the comms. "You're not serious." "I am," he said. "It's the only way." "We can't. We must." She looked at him across the bridge. "There are other ships, other systems. Even if Earth dies, we live." "No," Ronan said. "Earth is home. We don't scatter like cowards. We stand. Or we end." The timer ticked down. 30 hours, 29. The strike team sent a final message. They'd reached the lab. They could see Thornvale, a small cylindrical device resting in a containment field, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Dax spoke calmly. "We can rig it to detonate right here. Detonate it before launch." Ronan replied, "No. We can't risk activation. You disable it, or I burn it." Dax didn't argue. He simply said, "Understood." But the facility wasn't done fighting. Self-defense protocols kicked in. The core began to overheat. Explosions rocked the spire. Vacuum alarms blared. Ronan could hear his men dying. And still, the timer ticked. 24 hours. Cerberus 3 sent its last signal. Primary target corrupted. Defensive cascade engaged. Infiltration unsustainable. Ronan exhaled. He knew what that meant. The AI was losing control. He turned to Brig. "Evacuate the support fleet, now." "You're staying?" "I'm ending this." Brig didn't argue. He just saluted. Kova walked up to him as alarms screamed across the ship. "This isn't just about vengeance anymore, is it?" "No," he said. "It's about your son." "Yes." "And our future?" He looked at her, then nodded. She touched his arm. "Make it mean something." And left. He stood alone on the bridge as systems overloaded. Heat rose and gravity shivered. He keyed in the Omega Burn sequence. The screen flashed red. Arming Omega Burn, 180 seconds to detonation. Ronan opened a channel to Earth. Not to command, to the people. Across colonies, screens flickered, and his face appeared, sweat-soaked, blood-stained, resolute. "This is Commander Ronan," he said. "I may not make it back." He paused. "They tried to erase us. They called us monsters. And maybe we became what they feared." He looked down. "But we never stopped fighting." He looked back up, eyes burning. "We lived. We endured. We clawed our way through hell. And today, I stand on the edge of that hell again, not to beg, not to plead, but to promise you this." He took a breath. "Earth will survive, even if I don't." The message cut out. The singularity drive reached critical. Ronan stood in the center of the bridge as the walls bent inward, metal groaning, stars twisting into a spiral of light. He held his son's toy soldier in his hand, smiled, and whispered, "Let them remember." The Indomitable vanished in a pulse of gravity that erased the Ulari spire from existence. The galaxy shuddered. Thornvale was gone. The Accord was shattered. Earth survived. But Ronan was gone, or so the galaxy thought. He became a myth within hours of his death. The footage of the Indomitable's final burn, that singular flash of light as the Singularity payload consumed the Ulari Spire, replayed across every system, every colony, every backwater outpost that once forgot Earth existed. The war ended not with a treaty, not with signatures and handshakes, but with silence. Stunned, broken, terrified silence. The Accord collapsed within days. The remaining members, those still clinging to authority, found their fleets in disarray, their leaders in hiding, their people in open rebellion. Ulari worlds suffered internal mutinies. Varnath command structures imploded as soldiers refused to fire another shot. Dravari syndicates were hunted in the streets by their own clients. There were no speeches, no declarations, only retreat. Human space, once quarantined by fear and isolation, now stood untouched, not by diplomacy, not by alliance, by respect, earned in the only language the galaxy ever truly understood: sacrifice and strength. Kova was promoted to High Commander within a week, though she refused the title. She simply called herself Keeper of the Line, echoing something Ronan used to say when the siege first began. "We hold the line, no matter what's on the other side." Brigg led the reconstruction of Sol's outer defense network, not because he had to, but because he couldn't sleep if he didn't. He poured every waking hour into ensuring no other generation would face what his had. As for Dax Varen, he disappeared. Some say he died in the Spire. Others claim they saw him boarding a rogue ship headed for the Andari Shroud, a place where maps failed and ghosts ruled. No one ever confirmed it. But every time an Accord fugitive turned up dead with a coin on their chest, people whispered his name. And Ronan? He became more than a man. They built a statue where the Indomitable launched its final assault, a towering monument of forged titanium and scorched marble, shaped like a man standing with his back to Earth, facing the stars. One hand at his side, one holding a child's toy soldier. It became a pilgrimage site. Veterans, survivors, refugees from the siege. They all came, not to pray, to remember, and to promise that no species would ever cross into human space again. But behind the public myth, behind the flags and statues, there was another legacy. A file, encrypted, sealed by Kova herself, marked Ronan Last Directive. Inside was a message, pre-recorded, time-stamped 20 minutes before detonation. His face looked older than ever, tired, not broken, just spent. "If you're watching this, I'm gone," he said plainly. "And I need you to know, I didn't do this because I wanted to. I did it because no one else would." He looked away for a moment. "I don't know what comes next. Peace, war, something worse. But I know this. Earth can't forget what it's become." He leaned closer. Not just fighters, survivors, warriors, yes, but with a soul. Don't lose that. Don't become them. He paused. "They took everything from us. We gave them fire in return. But don't let fire be all we are. Let it be what we needed, not what we become forever." His eyes softened, and for a flicker of a second, the soldier disappeared, and the father returned. "Tell them. I tried." Then the message ended. Kova never released it publicly. She buried it in a secure node deep in Earth's central archive, locked behind her own genetic key. Maybe one day the world would be ready to see it, but not yet. For now, they needed Ronan the symbol, Ronan the wrath, Ronan the wall the galaxy broke itself against. Earth changed after that. It didn't become a conqueror. It didn't build an empire. It became a sentinel. Its borders were laced with detection grids, quantum mines, auto-response fleets. Any vessel breaching those lines received no warning, no negotiation, just a memory. No species enters human space. The phrase etched into orbital stations, taught in every colony school, repeated in every fleet's oath. And yet, inside that border, Earth healed. Slowly. The children rescued from the labs grew up, many under protection, some under silence. Some had scars too deep for medicine to touch, but most lived. One, the boy with the toy soldier, joined the fleet 20 years later. His first act as captain? Laying a wreath at the Ronin statue's base. Earth remembered. But Earth endured. Galactic politics tried to rebuild, of course. Fractured alliances whispered of reunification, new councils, new names. But no matter what banner they flew, they never touched Sol again. Because they all remembered what one human ship did. What one father, broken by grief, forged in loss, driven by vengeance, was willing to become. They remembered that Earth didn't die when they tried to kill it. It got angry, and the galaxy would never forget the cost of crossing the line. In the end, no one knew if Ronin had truly died. No body, no black box, no fragment of his DNA recovered. Some said he became part of the singularity, absorbed into the gravitational wound he unleashed. Others believed he lived somehow, that he escaped in one of the drop pods, that he wandered the edge of the galaxy in exile, watching, waiting. A few conspiracy channels even claimed he was the voice behind certain coded distress calls sent from the fringe systems where the last remnants of the Accord tried to regroup. But those were just stories. Until, one day, a child on an outer colony found a strange box buried beneath a tree, planted in memory of the siege. Inside was a toy soldier, scratched, old, still intact. Tied to it was a simple note. Keep holding the line. No name, no date, just a legacy that would never fade. The man who burned the stars to save a planet and made the galaxy remember. The end.